Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the pod. My name is Devin Cole. I just wanted to kick things off by giving you a little background about me. I grew up in Ventura, California, and basketball has been a part of my life for as long as I can remember. I played at Buena High School. By my senior year, I was able to be an all state player, and I started my college career at UC Irvine. And then COVID hit, and like a lot of people, things changed quick and I transferred back home to Ventura College. But unfortunately, our season got postponed, and that's when I got started with coaching and training athletes. I was working with Team Build Up, my former AAU program, and I found a new way to stay connected to the game and help others grow. Fast forward a bit, me and my wife were expecting our first child, and I made the choice to join the military to support my family. And now I'm a diver in the Navy while still training athletes, staying connected to the game, and I've just started to branch out onto the online space. And in this podcast, me and Joe will be talking about all things basketball from the NBA to skill development to the weight room. So thanks for tuning in. Let's get into it.
Yeah. What's up, everybody? My name is Joseph Kim. Same thing with Devin. I grew up in Ventura. We've been playing basketball together on the same club and high school team since sixth grade. I was not as good of a player as Devin, and so I didn't end up anywhere after high school. But um, I moved to Boston to attend Boston University for undergrad and graduate school for physical therapy. Um, where I got to work at University of Florida as well as Overtime Elite, working with athletes. Currently, I am working at an outpatient private clinic called Beantown Physio, where I see practically everybody with musculoskeletal conditions, but working with some high school athletes, younger athletes, and as well as adult athletes as well. Um, yeah.
Cool. So you said you worked with OTE. How long were you at OTE?
I was there for 12 weeks, last January to March.
Okay. So is that just like pretty much the duration of the season?
Actually, no. So OT is a little bit, they start in the fall, but the way my program works is we were go on a couple of 12-week clinical internships. So that was the time I was there. And it was a good time because it was like midway through the season, and then I got to leave basically right before the finals ended for OT.
Okay, so you pretty much hopped in mid-season and then got to kind of see him
Yeah.
through. Okay, so
Mhm.
because you guys were in season, what what did a lot of your work in the weight room consist of?
Yeah, good question. So there was the head strength and conditioning coach who also happened to be a physical therapist, um, James Davis III. He had worked for the 76ers in the past as well. Um, but each, they would lift 3 times a week consistently, no matter if it was game day or not. Sometimes they would just reduce the volume a bit if it was game day. Um, but a lot of heavy compound movements. It was a full body day, basically every day. But you know, right, different different things throughout the week. Some days might be a bit more like quad focus, while other days a bit more posterior chain focus kind of thing.
Hmm.
Yeah, but
Yeah, I just
yeah,
started.
gotta help out.
I started kind of switching up my splits into posterior,
Hmm.
anterior, full body. Um, I was watching a podcast with the Auburn strength and conditioning coach. He was saying that's how he prefers his splits, and so I thought I'd give it a try. But um, I enjoy it. I find I feel like it kind of makes more sense than doing the traditional like upper lower split. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah. Anyways, what did so overtime elite? There's pretty high level players there, right? It's pretty elite
Yeah.
high school group. So like, what did you notice about the difference being between like your normal high school basketball player and like those guys?
That's a good question. So, I mean, number one, just a raw talent standpoint, right? Um, these kids are there like variety of heights, but like like your classic 6'8", 6'7", NBA wing size, giant hands, jump out the gym, right? So just straight up talent and raw talent standpoint, just way different. Um, Another thing too is just how much basketball they already played in their lives and how much investment they had from early on. Just so much skill level at like 14, 15, 16. It's actually, sorry, I think 14 is young. Yeah, I think 15 was the youngest one. But either way, like
Yeah.
just the amount of skill level and just the amount of basketball they had played
Hmm.
was like a ridiculous amount. And yeah, just I think they're a bit more focused, right, on making it to the next level. Most high school basketball players are like that's your athletic peak in the sense of organized
Yeah.
sports.
One
Yeah,
is That's a little bit of a different situation than most high school kids because it's like it's kind of bridging that gap between high school and college because like in high school basketball is kind of just like your hobby because you're going to school from 8 o'clock in the morning
right.
until 3 in the afternoon, and then you got an hour or two to work out. But what was their like? What was their schedules like? Like, were they just it was just basketball all day, or did they have any like requirements when it comes to classroom? I don't know how that works.
Yeah, good question. So they would have like a morning practice generally, and then morning lift as well. And then around 9, 10, um, school would start a little bit later than usual, right? Than their classic high school. Have school during the day, and then afterwards it would be like a skill workout in the afternoon, or some teams they practice in the afternoon. But yeah, lifting was mostly all done in the morning, and then afternoon sometimes when we would have time for more like rehab sessions and skill work and like other like accessory stuff like that outside of the main team stuff.
Okay. Um, that brings us to my next thing I wanted to talk about. What did you when it comes to rehab? Were you dealing with any guys with any patellar or Achilles tendinopathy issues while you're down there?
Definitely patellar. Achilles, I don't recall, but I'd say almost the majority of the kids had some sort of patellar
Yeah.
tendinopathy issue. The ones who put in the work got better. Ones who didn't put in the work, it just shouldn't be kind of bug you unless you lift heavy, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but definitely, yeah, such a quad dominant sport.
Yeah.
On those young bodies, it's gonna be, it's gonna call,
Said the
what
ones
do
who
you call
put
it?
in
It's
the
gonna
work.
require a lot for the tendon.
What was that?
I'm just saying, it just requires a lot for your patella tendon for
Oh,
basketball.
yeah.
You just gotta lift.
You said the ones who put in the work were able to get better. What was the work? What are you guys doing on a daily basis when it comes to, especially in season? Because out of season, like first step for patella or tendon pain is usually to step back, take a couple steps back from what's causing you pain, and then try and progress from there. But when you're in season and you have demands, what are some things you can do to kind of keep playing? I guess.
Good question. So how we structured it, or how OTE structured it, was so each lift, before you lift, there's like a little warm up circuit, core, kind of legs, like getting everything involved, right? Nothing too crazy heavy, and then um, just to prepare you for that circuit you're going to do for your workout. But in so there would be three different exercises that players would rotate during the workout, like a little circuit, 2 to 3 sets per. Two of those were predetermined by the strength and conditioning coach. One was like something ab wise, another thing was for your legs. Um, but that third thing would be whatever your needs are, whether it's a rehab need, whether it's, so you just have really weak adductors based on our testing. You have really weak quads, blah, blah, blah. Whatever that shortcoming is, if you have patella tendinopathy, that is what one of the stations was specifically designed for each player to work on those shortcomings or weaknesses or rehab goals. So, for instance, if you have patella tendinopathy, um, it would just be something super focused on heavy, slow loading of the quads and that patella tendon. So, like a knee extension machine, ISO. It could be like a single leg squat, ISO. Sometimes we do like reverse Nordics, right, with a weighted med ball with a partner back and forth. Obviously, so many different exercises just to load that patellar tendon. Um, so we would just choose one that the athlete um, didn't hate. I wouldn't say enjoy, and didn't hate, and was like pretty easily doable, and teachable. Yeah.
Yeah, so I forgot about reverse Nordics. I need to start adding those back in. Um, you said you guys
Solid.
were doing like when it comes to the players' needs based on their testing. What
Mhm.
what went into your guys' testing? Like what technology did you guys have, if you had any, and what were you guys
Mhm.
testing?
Yeah, good question. So every week, along with the lifts, during the lift time, we would take um, just some strength testing and jump testing numbers, and so it's like folded into the lifting schedule. So on Mondays, for instance, would be you would get on the force plates and do some jumping. So that would tracks a lot of different things, right? On top of just your jump height, force production, how your decel rate, your decel power, velocity, all of that. Um, and then the other days we would do a hamstring curl test. So it's a Nordic. It's just a Nordic curl, but the sensors are the ones actually strapped onto the ankles. So they, what do you call it? Give you a value on how strong your hamstrings are.
How much force you're putting into
And then,
those?
yeah, exactly. And then there's an abductor adductor machine. These are from the Vald system or the Vald company. They produce an abductor adductor test sensor. So you're just laying down on your back, knees bent, just either squeezing your legs or pushing your legs apart. So those would be the main ones. And then we also would do quad strength testing. It was just harder to set up, but we would try to get that in like once a month. So originally they were just strapped up to like a rehab table and asked to um, they're just strapped on with like a dynamometer and then asked to kick against that. Dynamometer is a machine that just helps you like quantitate how much like force production you're getting. Um, but because that one wasn't the most ideal setup, we actually it was like my first week I got there. Actually, my mentor, my clinical instructor, Track Norris, he came up with this idea to like basically modify the knee extension machine where we can just add the dynamometer onto it, and then you would just be kicking the regular pad like you would in a knee extension machine.
Okay.
Um, but it would be more of an isometric, right,
Yeah.
hold. So it would just compute like at each degree. We did 90 degrees, or no, excuse me, we did 70 degrees of knee flexion, um, because according to like what Track was reading and what he had talked about with some leading artists, that's where like basketball players generally produce the most force in their from their quad. Um, yeah, I guess we're in those positions quite a bit, right? We're not really at 90 degrees
Yeah.
producing a whole bunch of force all the time.
Makes sense.
But yeah, just hooked it up to the knee extension machine, set it up that way. So it was a really cool thing to see in terms of just being creative and trying to get some strength testing numbers for athletes.
You guys are doing most of those weekly, right?
Yeah, strength testing every week, besides the quad, once a month. Yeah, and then there would also be what do you call it? Like Planiflex or like calf strength testing as well. That would be that setup was a lot more difficult, so it didn't happen as frequently. But definitely before the season, like mid-season at some point, and then towards the end of the season, just to track, um, yeah, where the strength was going, if the programs were working, if the strength testing was working.
When it comes to in-season lifts, something I've been thinking about. What do you think about um, continuing sprint work in season, like just straight 40s or 80-yard sprints, like shorter distance sprints in season?
Wait, Dev, say that again because it was like
We cutting out?
it's breaking up. Yeah, I just have to cut that part out.
Can you
Yeah,
hear
ask
me
the
now?
question again. Yeah, better now. Yeah.
No, I was just saying, what do you think about in-season sprints, like actual sprint training, maintaining that throughout the season? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I like knowing what I know now. Definitely would train some sort of sprint, especially for basketball players. You're not getting that stimulus on court, right? Even on like the OT court, they play on the NBA court, size wise. Um, but still, even then, you're not hitting that top speed because you're not really running baseline to baseline. You know what I mean? It's like for most players, it's like
3 to 3.
at most underneath the basket to the free throw. Kind of, you're slowing down by the time you hit like 3 point line.
Yeah.
So you're not gonna get that really top right max top speed, and so you're not getting the max load to the hamstrings as well. So I think knowing what I know now, you probably have more experience with this. I would definitely train it. What have you noticed? Because we've talked about it off camera before about how sprinting has made you feel a lot more athletic and it's done. Seems to be a really positive thing. Yeah, I just want to
Yeah,
hear your experience on adding that in.
I would definitely. That's why I brought it up. I would definitely start. I would definitely implement it. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
pretty low volume. Like if you're gonna do it a couple times a week, like I don't think you need a ton from it. Maybe 2 to 3 sprints in a session. Like just get that exposure to it. Um,
Right.
just because you're not getting it, and you don't want to be completely detrained because we get so many positive things from sprinting. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
why not do it at the end of the day? But yeah, I would definitely maintain it throughout the season. There's no reason not to. Um, I think it would help with maintaining that athletic performance throughout the season. Like you talked about, getting your vert testing that you guys are doing every week. Like you're still going to have to be doing those max exposure things, so you might as well keep them in our training. It's kind of my thought process behind it.
Okay.
But
Do you feel like what like so I know we were talking off camera a bit more about this, where how you've incorporated sprinting into your workouts and then with your athletes as well. Just want to hear from you, like how have you incorporated it, and like how has that changed your game, or like how has it like positively benefit you or your clients on the court?
yeah, I mean, just all the benefits from an athletic perspective or athleticism perspective when it comes to sprints. You're um, getting so many good qualities from it. So just in the whole picture of being a better basketball player, it definitely has impacted everything from my vertical to my first step to all of those things, especially when you're incorporating accelerations, decelerations, being able to slow down a little bit faster. Um, and then same thing with my clients too, just especially with a lot of kids now who are specializing earlier and earlier, and they're
Mhm.
not getting exposed to those top end speed training or just in general that exposure. So it's definitely helped myself and all my clients with everything.
Nice.
But getting into getting into so we're talking about sprinting, a lot of top end speed, but basketball is also very lateral.
Mhm.
I was thinking about this the other day. When it comes to like your adductors and abductors, you guys said you were testing the strength and all of that.
Mhm.
What's a good way to go about training it outside of that adductor abductor machine?
Mhm.
I just notice like either if it's from sprinting or from basketball itself, I feel like it's kind of hard to hit those areas of the adductors with a traditional lift because it's a lot of just short ground contact time exploding the opposite way. So how do you go? How do you go about that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So strength and like kind of power, like move, like strength exercises, like more targeting strength, and then power a little bit different, right? In terms of like the velocity you produce. Um, so a really good exercise for your adductors are like Copenhagen's, which would be it's essentially like a side plank, but your top leg is on a bench, right? Whether it's your knee or ankle's a contact point, and you're
Hmm.
going into hip abduction, so stretching the leg away from you, right? To stretch the adductors, and then you would then shorten it, right? Bring your leg back closer to your body by contracting the adductors. That's a really good one. Like the machine, yes, that's another way you can load it. But I think Copenhagen's, and you can load Copenhagen's too. You can put a dumbbell on your hip, um, things like that. There's different ways to load it. Um, Another one I like to use is a like a lateral squat, either with a slide pad. That shouldn't be really challenging to your adductors actually. So if you have, right, so let's say your left leg is the stance leg and your right foot is the one on the slide pad, right? You would go down, do a squat on the left leg while your right leg stays straight, right? Get the slide pad to go out, bring it back in. It's pretty challenging for your adductors, or just a lateral squat where you're just squatting side to side, get the adductor lengthening a bit. Um, but yeah, like you said, it's like harder to do. Like a lot of basketball players aren't doing these lifts, right? Because it's a little bit challenging. There's there's decent learning curve compared to like doing a bicep curl, right?
You forget about
Um,
him.
right, and you forget about them. But those are good ways to load it. Abductor is the machine, like you said, but um, you got like a pulley, like on the cables. You can do some sideways kicks maybe, or that one machine that's like it's not at every gym, but it's like the one standing where you can do the hip stuff on the machine.
The
Um,
cables?
no, it's like you're standing, and then there's a there's like a smaller one of those like little knee extension pads, and then you can either put it like on. Usually people put it around their knees, and then you can like stand up and do some side kicks. You can face and do like some hip flexor kicks as well. That machine.
I don't know if I've seen. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep, I know what you're talking about now.
I don't know.
Okay,
I forget the name. It's not super common.
it's not. I've
Yeah.
I've really only seen that in like videos of track athletes working out. To be honest, never actually
Right.
seen it
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
person.
Luckily, I have one at my gym. Like we had one at University of Florida, but it's pretty rare. Like you're not gonna find it at a commercial gym generally.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, I feel people avoid it because it's like a lot of older people on it. It seems
What'd you say?
like it's like a grandma machine, you know. It's like one of those like
Oh yeah.
you see old people on it. Yeah, but so those are some ways you can do the strength training component where you're trying to load it up. But
Mhm.
I would say in terms of like the more quicker speed, like the power movements, like skaters, so like lateral jumps are good for your abductors. I found like I get some good loading fatigue to the abductors, especially if you go for more endurance wise too.
Mhm.
Um, but adductors wise, that's a great question. I think you might get the load playing the sport, but I can't necessarily. Like, it's harder to you know get that specific load. I think if you're just trying
Yeah.
to do it with plyo
It's
drill.
just a weird. It's a weird position. I mean, some people, more simplistic people, would argue that you just get the muscle stronger and then you play the sport and
Yeah,
it'll be better. But I was just wondering if there was any little secrets to loading the adductor because it's just in a weird spot.
yeah.
Um, I
But I
was
think
working.
definitely like just getting it lengthened or working it in the lengthened position super important, right? With the lateral squats or like the Copenhagen's, just yeah, you got to load it at this at that lengthened position because we're not really loading our like adductors when they're shortened because otherwise
Yeah,
you'll just be standing straight up. It's not a very athletic position, right?
right.
Yeah.
So if an athlete were to come to you today, what what would you go? What should they be training? If a basketball player came up to you today, like, hey, I don't really know what I should be doing right now. I'm a sophomore in high school, going into my junior year.
Mhm.
What should I be doing right now?
That's a good question, and we'll see. I'll ask you the same thing, and I'm sure it will differ a little bit. And you have more experience in that training world, but sophomore in high school, most sophomores that I encounter, you know, like outside OT, like patients that I get, right, that are athletes are generally haven't really had any serious lifting experience. So even as a PT, even if I'm rehabbing them for something specific, knee pain, a hamstring strain, I will introduce them to the basics of strength and conditioning just to get a good foundation. So if I was in charge of one athlete and like their basketball career, that would be one of the first things we attack is okay, let's get you just strong, everywhere strong, upper body, lower body, core, everything just stronger. Which like they get stronger super fast because they've never really lifted before. It's just about making sure they do it the correct form and you're not over fatiguing them. I think. And then basketball wise, obviously you want to like see what kind of player they are. How tall are they? Like those specifics. But shooting's a non-negotiable for me, um, especially now. Like if you can shoot and play decent defense where you're not a negative, like you will always have a spot on the team. I think at any level, you have to do those things to that level, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like just having those two skill sets is like you will find your spot on the roster if you can do those two things. And then afterwards it's figuring out from there, attacking your weaknesses, making your strength stronger. Like I really like the Miami Heat, what they've done with a lot of their players. It's like, all right, you have this one specific skill you're really good at. Let's turn it into a superpower, right?
Yeah.
Duncan Robinson with his shooting, like things like that.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. When it comes to the skill work involved, is like I remember when I was every off season, I was more focused on the things that I didn't do well versus the things that I did. So it was always about doing better what I don't do well, but not so much about taking the next step on the things I was doing well. So I think that kind of hindered some of my progress early on, was just because I was focusing on the wrong things, right? Like, oh, I have a really good pull-up jump shot, but I want to finish the basket better, so I'm going to spend the majority of my time working on that, and then the thing that you like to actually get to in games starts to falter it, So definitely don't neglect your strengths, I would say. But I would take a similar approach. If I got you immediately after the season, I would say, big thing for me that I've been thinking about more recently and telling my clients is like immediately after the season, take 2 weeks. Like don't touch basketball. Like don't look at it. Like everyone is always at the end of the season ready to go, and then now it's May 15th, and you're like, oh, basketball practice again. Like you got to kind of start learning how to force yourself to stay away for a second. I'm not saying take months at a time off. I'm just saying have that discipline to stay away from the game. It's okay to miss it a little bit and then come back to it fresh and ready to attack the off season. But same idea as you. It's not incredibly different. Definitely want to get that strength. But you have to have a baseline level of strength, and just go from there. Get him on the track. Make sure he knows how to sprint with decent form. I'm not a track guy. I didn't really run track. I don't know perfect sprinting form, but I mean, there's little basics that I've learned from the internet and everything. So make sure they can do all those things. Make sure they know how to run. Start overloading that sprinting early on so that we can continually progress that as the off season goes on. And then start jumping. Full approach jumps. Probably start with very little at first because I don't think enough people go and jump. It's the same idea as the sprinting. You need to go run and try to dunk like a couple times a week. I try to keep that in my programming all the time. Like it should be max effort jumping, max effort sprinting twice a week. And then just go from there. Same idea. What are you good at? What are you not so good at? How do we get this better? How do we round out that part of the game? But yeah, I mean, at this point in the off season, I think in terms of playing wise, like if I have a sophomore and he's playing on some crappy AAU team that is playing every weekend, my advice would probably be to stop playing AAU.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you, because obviously the culture now is you get your high school season. As soon as you finish, you're going straight to AAU, playing 2, 3, 4 games every weekend until it's time for high school season again. it's yeah. What are your opinions on that in terms of like, should they play another sport? Should they just take the time off? Like, so, like you said, kids specialize super early nowadays, so you can't stop them from like you can't even get them to play another sport a lot of times. But the parents are that's a different
Parents are
topic.
parents.
Yeah,
Yeah.
oh my goodness. I've seen kids come into PT and it's like, oh, what's the cause of injury? Oh, I talked about well, it's you, the
Yeah.
parent. You are the cause of injury. You signed them up for 2 club teams,
Yeah.
back to
Playing 8
got
games
two
a week.
practices a
I
night.
just don't
Like,
know
yeah,
why he keeps getting hurt.
yeah. Well, I don't know why he has a stress fracture at 13. I don't know. He's playing like 6 hours of lacrosse every day, 6 days a week. Like, yeah,
Yeah, it's insane. But I mean, it obviously depends on. It always depends on the player, right? Um, if, but for I would say for the majority, I tweeted about this a little while ago. But what are the benefits of AAU? Right, greater exposure to talent. Right,
yeah.
you can go out of your area to see different levels of players
Mhm.
and exposure to college coaches, getting in front of college coaches. Right, those are probably the two big ones I would say. So if you're not if you're not dominating your high school area, if you're not going to LA Fitness and dominating everyone, if you're not playing pickup after school and dominating everyone, you're not even
Yeah,
good enough for your own area. You don't need that exposure to a greater area. Like, and I'm not saying don't play at all throughout the summer, but
yeah,
get off those teams that are playing every single weekend. Like, play once a month, play twice a month. Perfect. Like what we
right.
did until we were 15. Like I had that. I did it on accident. I didn't know I was doing it, but
It's
we
because
go
we were
play.
kind of getting scammed too.
What is it?
It's because we were getting scammed by the coach. That's what we played once, twice a month. But yes, I guess it worked out in, in the big picture.
We were getting scammed. We didn't even pay him.
The Celtics? No, I'm not
Oh, the
talking about him. Yeah,
Celtics.
the
Oh,
Celtics.
dude, that
This
was
is
like
just strictly
sixth
sixth grade. This
grade.
is for context. AU coach for like I don't know, was it $100 a month or something? And we're
I
practicing
don't
on
know. I don't
outdoor
know. What we were paying him, but
basketball courts.
we got out of that program pretty quick.
Yeah,
Yeah. Hey, we got what happened? We did the free throw a thon to get new team shoes, and then he shows up after the free throw a thon with a new car.
yeah.
Uh,
Oh man.
but no, I think when it comes to AAU, it's like you just have to know what you're doing it for. Like
Mhm.
I think the fact that everyone's specializing earlier and earlier makes
Mhm.
it harder not to because their skills are going to continue improving. I mean, I would still recommend, especially until their freshman year of high school, playing a spring sport,
Yeah.
do something else. Like again, what are you getting from AAU? Exposure to greater fields of talent and seeing and getting in the eyes of college coaches. They're not looking at you when you're 11 years old, so you don't need to do that. It's okay.
Uh,
They're
yeah.
not, you know, John
Not seven.
Calipari is not going to your 12-year-old's AAU game. I promise. It's okay. Take the weekend off. Get
Yeah.
in the gym. Work on your skills. Go play track. Go learn how to run. Go learn how to do some long jump. Like
Right.
take the time away from it and develop all those qualities you're not getting from basketball. Um, but at the same time, that's when a good trainer like myself can come in and you can still stay basketball focused and oriented when all these other kids are playing year round, but still get those other exposures to top end speed, max approach jumping. If I had it, I would definitely start implementing some long jump into my training just to get that 1 foot explosiveness. Because a lot of basketball is going to be placed off 1 foot, sprinting past someone and trying to elevate. So
Right.
that kind of brings me into something I want to talk about. What do you think is the best sport for um, breeding athleticism?
Good question. I was that actually relates to a question I was going to ask about playing like a second sport, like because you can tell somebody to go play a second sport, right? but should we be more strategic about it? It's like, okay, basketball, what are you getting? A lot of jumping, right? You're getting a lot of quick start-stop stuff, lateral cuts, right? Things like that. But you're not getting the full-end sprint. So should we go tell somebody, like, go play soccer in the off-season kind of thing, or even baseball, you run the bases. Maybe you don't get the top-end speed, but like, or like, you know what I mean? It's like, should we strategically choose a sport to target the athleticism?
I think so.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So what would you tell basketball players to play?
So, well, it's hard. It's hard for basketball because I think the sport would be soccer, but it's the same season. I think that
Yeah.
would be the best. I think for youth, it's in the fall actually, but once you get to high school,
Yeah.
it's winter, so which sucks. But I think soccer would be great because you're still getting some of that coordination um, that you'd be missing out on, and it's with your
Right.
foot, and you get kind of a better relationship with your feet and how you can kind of manipulate footwork differently. You get a different understanding of it, right?
True.
Steve Nash when he's talking about like the Steve Nash dribble when they were talking about it on him and LeBron's podcast. Like he learned that from like hockey.
Right.
So just getting a different perspective on how to attack different angles and use different footworks, and see how you can kind of bring that into basketball. Um, but I think for older basketball players in terms of the youth stages, like probably track would be one that I would recommend just because it's just raw athleticism, you know? And then, if you really feel like it, do some ball handling on your own time. But get on the track, you'll be with a track coach who knows how to sprint and knows how to train it, hopefully, and you can kind of learn all that, get that top end speed, do the 100, do the 200, do the long jump, do the high jump. Um, but yeah, would you agree or what do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think soccer would have been my answer had it not been the same season. I think definitely California. What you're saying is like we had a buddy Andrew, right, who just chose to play basketball even though he's a much better soccer player. Just wanted to put it
Yeah,
home recently.
I want to be with the boys. Who's with the boys?
Real one right there. But I think in Massachusetts, I think different states it differs a little bit.
That makes
But
sense.
either way, I would have said soccer too for those reasons. The sprinting you get, and then the footwork coordination. It's very different when you have to actually like, use your foot to manipulate a ball,
Mm-hmm.
and like just get the right footwork across somebody over kind of thing. So that's a good point. It's usually soccer to basketball transition seems like it produces some good good NBA stars.
Yeah.
But I don't know what other sport like tennis is like. Okay, you're doing similar lateral cuts in a
Yeah.
confined space
You
kind
can
of
make
thing.
you can make a tennis argument.
Yeah, like, overall, best probably soccer, and then I like track, like the sprinting and then the jumping.
I
and
think
just
I
all
think a
around
lot of
it.
people would be surprised that we didn't talk about volleyball.
Yeah,
But you're just because of the vertical aspect, right? So all anyone thinks about is dunking a basketball, but there's just so much more to basketball than just jumping straight up. So I
yeah,
think that's probably why neither of us brought it up was because you're getting the vertical aspect, but you're not really getting any of the other aspects of basketball in terms of actually moving laterally. Like there's a short second where you might go to the left for half a second, but there's no follow up in terms of speed.
yeah.
But
That's true. And it's like the jumping in volleyball is very mechanical, rather than like basketball. Is like you have to learn how to jump in different ways.
more
You know what I
dynamic.
mean? Like you can have. You have to be a lot more fluid too. It's like like those guys were like the Hamadou Diallos of this world, right? Like 40-something inch vert. Oh my god, crazy athleticism, but it just sometimes just doesn't translate. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? When they're in the air versus like, um, I don't know, like Jalen Brunson per se. This dude's not really jumping out the gym, but like when he gets in the air, like he like gets enough hang time and gets to where he wants to go without having. I mean, he probably just has like average vertical, I'm assuming, for the NBA. Maybe a
NBA
little bit.
average,
He's a
yeah.
6'3", so probably a little bit
I mean,
above
he still
average.
has a 36-inch vert, I think.
Yeah, but it's still like the that fluidity versus like volleyball. Like you do the same footwork every time.
It's
It's like
static, yeah. It's that same
yeah,
lot of
like
arm movement too. Like you're getting a lot of arm swing. You don't get arm swing in basketball.
that's
I mean,
true.
unless you're catching
Yeah,
a
or the
lob, but
basketball sometimes. Yeah.
um, other than catching a lob, you're not really getting that arm swing. Or I guess blocking the
Mhm.
shot. But
That's true. Yeah, back to your question about the sport that builds the most athleticism. I'm biased. I want to say basketball. Outside of basketball, like I think football, you see obviously those freak athletes, but so position dependent, right?
yeah.
It's like that tiny little slot receiver versus his
Well, let's
athleticism
say
versus
for
his left
the
tackle.
sake of the argument, we'll say football player. We'll say cornerbacks or
Sure.
wide receivers and cornerbacks.
Yeah, yeah, definitely would. I think. I don't know. That's a good question. I can't think of a straight answer right
I think my answer is still soccer.
now. Yeah.
Um, Me and my buddy have had a few different conversations about it because we try to break down like all aspects of athleticism, right? Not just being athletic, but also the coordination piece and the performance piece and things like that. Um, and we kind of tried to make an argument for every sport, as like a fun game. Like,
Yeah.
well, golf is very mental and like that performance piece where you have to take all that time and walk to your ball and think about it. It's quiet. So, just I came to the conclusion. I actually think no, I think basketball as well is can be the best. I think basketball can be the best. It has the most qualities assessed.
Yeah. Like if you were to put, I feel like a basketball player would do the best in all the other sports compared to like, like a soccer player who would have to play all these other sports. Is that what you're trying to get to?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
yeah, I think so. I just think it hits all the bases of athleticism, the coordination piece. You know,
Mhm.
even if you want to compare it to golf, it's like, well, we have free throws where everyone's staring at you. You got to do that one thing.
Yeah.
Um, just that mental piece of it that you don't get as much in a sport like soccer or football unless you're the kicker. Um,
Mhm.
and then you got the vertical aspect that you don't quite have in soccer. Obviously, there's
Right.
headers, but that's not until you're at a higher level. So in terms of building
Right.
athleticism, I would argue there's not much
That's true.
verticality happening in soccer. Um, and then baseball, no. Um, so it's really up to those sports, I think. So I think I agree with you. Basketball is probably it touches it just checks every box. I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Um, Especially from the conditioning aspect too. I feel like being in basketball shape is very unique than some of these other sports. As a lifelong basketball player who played football for like 2 years, did like a cameo in football. Like I never once felt fatigued at the end of a football game, if that makes sense, in terms of like aerobically. Like your body
Yeah.
hurts, you wake up with bruises the next day kind of deal. But that like aerobic fatigue, I really don't get. Soccer is like they do a lot more running, a lot more sprinting, but it's not as like quick like start stop kind of deal.
Yeah, probably longer breaks as well. More
Yeah,
jogging.
right. Even
Uh,
walking. A lot of times players are just walking on the
yeah,
pitch.
you don't get to do that in basketball.
Yeah, no. So yeah, I think even in that sense, it's like that can translate. Like we can go do soccer, yeah, we'll be out of breath, but like it's better than like a baseball player gonna go play soccer or
Oh
something
yeah.
like that.
I mean,
Baseball's like another.
a soccer player would probably have the best chance to hop on a basketball court, but it's still going to be a quite the transition.
I like lacrosse, honestly. Like those guys, like lacrosse. We had a so I play basketball at the EU gym still. This is when I was in school. Like lacrosse guys in the off season would pull up with their teammates and like they're talking on defense. Like they're like their teamwork, they're cutting and stuff. And like I was just talking to them afterwards. And, like yeah, like the translation, like it translates pretty well to basketball actually, just because
I could
just
see
how the
that.
game's played essentially.
I mean, I've never watched a game of lacrosse. I've seen I've seen some highlights,
Maybe
um,
one too.
but I could see it. Like the way you have to protect the ball with the stick, right, is not dribbling, but same idea where you have to position the ball away from the defense and then make your movements. So I could see it. I could see it translating. And there's still like that, not hand-eye coordination, but still that stick-eye coordination of it. That ball is tiny, so I don't know how they even see it. But
Yeah, sure. So yeah, any of you people listening, kids listening from the Santa Barbara area, you can go play lacrosse in the spring season. So we don't got that in Ventura.
they don't offer it in Ventura, unfortunately.
No,
We're not in that. We're not in the lacrosse tax bracket.
absolutely not. Your mom has to drive like a Mercedes, yeah. Her
Yeah,
mom has to
or
use
a,
maybe SUV, the Lexus.
or a Forerunner or something.
Yeah.
Uh, what else?
Oh yeah, so I guess I think we talked about it a little bit, but you want to. So like we talked a little bit about in-season training, right, and how you would do that. So just to go back to it, like a lot of people when they first start, it's like push pull legs or like chest day and chest and tries, back and buys, and then leg day, and then,
Yeah.
you a billion sets. You know what I mean? For I guess in versus off season for lifting wise, how would you structure it in terms of like are you doing full body or are you doing upper lower split, and how much like how many more sets would you do in the off season? I guess like how much more volume are you doing off season versus in season?
Um, obviously depends on the player and their level of everything, but say all things created equal. Like with myself, um, obviously there's different phases of in season and out of season. I think you can definitely you probably want to ramp up the volume like immediately after the season. That first phase of I think it's just a good idea immediately after season. Let's get a good 6 week strength training block. Like let's fully recover. We'll get there be some slower movements, and let's build all that strength back, get our base back, and then next is when you can start kind of getting into some power movements. But yeah, in terms of volume in season, if say we're doing for like a squat pattern in the off season, we're doing I don't know 8 to 10 sets in a week. Probably decrease that to 4 or 5, maybe 6, depending on the time. Like if you're in a tournament season or a tournament time, and you're only playing on the weekends, and you have a Monday or something, you can get a good leg day in and still have that time to recover. Um, but yeah, I would say anywhere from 40 to 50% of that volume
Yeah.
would be a
Okay.
good start.
Are you keeping the intensity the same though, even though volumes drop?
I would
Yeah.
at least further out from competition, right? So
Mhm.
maybe we're still doing our whatever it is. Say we were doing a 5x3 in the off season, and now we're doing a 2 or 3x3 in season. I still want that same intensity. Still want pushing yourself. And in theory, we would have trained you to that point where you can push those 2 or 3 sets and not be incredibly fatigued for
Mhm.
practice, or the next day you're not incredibly sore, right? So we're not just gonna randomly one Monday we're doing 3 rep maxes on your squat and expecting you to go produce in practice. But um, maybe the closer you get to games, like normally it's Thursday, Saturday you're playing. Maybe that Monday we could get 3 good sets in. Um, if if the game wasn't too much, obviously, again, it depends on the player. If he's playing 35 minutes a night in
Yeah.
college, Monday's probably still going to suck. So it's just going to be about how much can we get out of it, um, and just what's our risk to reward ratio with this lift. But
Okay.
definitely beginning of season. Let's try and keep as much volume as we can with as much intensity. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just taper down. Okay. And what because I've been seeing a lot of stuff. Maybe reading some stuff about like trying to get more into like tapping with the nervous system, right? Like your CNS. Seems like from what I'm reading, it's like having a high low day. So having a high intensity day followed by low intensity day, high intensity, low intensity, going like that seems to be the most optimal. And I think a lot of NBA teams end up doing this as well. Um, so what do you think about that? And how does that like affect your programming?
Yeah, I think about that because I've read similar things, and I mean it makes sense to an extent, especially in terms of off season
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to like that prep time, the month or two before season's actually getting underway.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of times in the weight room we try to be optimal and we try to always be as optimal as we can, but the reality of sport is it's not optimal. You're going to be playing random nights, like you'll play Thursday, like you're going to run into 2 or 3 tournaments a year where you're doing it every day,
Mm-hmm.
and depending on your coach, you're you might have a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday that sucks. And so how much do we want to get that nervous system used to the high low, or how much can we push that nervous system to be able to perform consecutive days? It's something I've been thinking about. I don't know exactly how to attack it, but that's just kind of my thoughts on the high low thing. It's like I get the like later or early and off season, and you're trying to just that working out optimally, and like because when you get that full recovery from your nervous system, you can really push that day because your nervous system's recovered. But once we're like prepping for season, how much can we ramp up that nervous system on consecutive days? Because that's what's going to be required of them on the basketball court.
That makes sense. Yeah. I also wonder how feasible it is for high school like students in season. Sometimes it's how NBA teams do it. It's like you have your intensive either the like morning of game day or like directly after the game, right? You saw the clips of the Suns players, right? What is with all that? People are clowning them for it, but like that was actually I think that was when it's like Schless Strength or something on Instagram. He was like the former Stanford coach of strength and conditioning, and then he was Suns. I think he's with the Pistons now. Because the guy was into microdosing.
He was the strength coach. Strength coach for that meme. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, he was a strength coach while the Suns were doing, but he was really into microdosing, which is you're doing like the full body or like a lot of exercises, but like keep it intense, but keep the volume down, and you're doing that like a lot, right? Almost like every
4 or 5 times in a day or something
week.
crazy.
Um, but I wonder how feasible it is. Like, if you play a high school game on Wednesday, like you're not gonna go lift after. It's hard to lift before. I will say though, like in terms of lifting heavy and like lifting intense, but not too fatiguing, has direct translations to your athletic performance even hours later. It increases like your vertical, increases like your jump speed, strength on the court if you get that stimulus earlier, like before the game, of like do like a heavy deadlift, do like a heavy squat, keep the volume low, um, keep the sets pretty low, intensity high. I wouldn't get to like, I don't think you're approaching failure necessarily.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So like preventing the fatigue, right? But doing that has been like proven to like directly correlate to on-court athleticism. So
I heard a story about a Olympic sprinter who used to maybe not max out on bench press, but that same idea before I think he ran the 100, but like before the Olympics, he's fucking got 3 plates on the bar. Like bench.
Yeah, those sprinters, look at their arms, man. Like Usain Bolt's arms are huge. Like his biceps are like giant. Yeah, it's all power.
Yeah. It's like that old, what's what's that thing? It's just like train like an app. It's like most people will look at bodybuilders and say like, oh, I don't really want to look like that. But
Mm.
then they'll look at like Usain Bolt or like Cristiano Ronaldo, and they're
Right.
like, I want to look like that. But then they'll go
Yeah.
train like Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
Like people aren't really putting that connection. Like, oh, if I train like an athlete, I'll actually look how I want to look. But
Right.
everyone wants to follow what Arnold did. And but, random thought.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching the Do Better podcast. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe, and go to our Instagram at dobetter_pod.